about Chihiro versus Sen brings me to something else that I wanted to point out about Japanese. If you look in the kanji section, you'll notice that nearly every kanji has more than one possible pronunciation, right? And they're marked with either a little white arrow or a black arrow, right? That's because they're the different readings of various kanji fall into two categories. The chi in Chihiro versus the sen are an example of that. Sen is a Chinese reading of that kanji.
I wrote sen earlier, forgot all about it.
Is a Japanese reading. And the reason you've got both in, I think chi is a Japanese, yeah, because now I'm starting to question, wait a minute, because a lot of times multiple kanji compounds have Chinese readings on them, but hiro is most definitely Japanese. That's a Japanese reading for sure. Hiroi is an adjective. But at any rate, even if this isn't as good an example as I thought, onyoni are readings that are of Chinese origin. They come from the fact that kanji were originally borrowed from China, right? And since they were borrowed from China, they already were being pronounced in some way by Chinese people, right? And whatever that pronunciation was, Japanese people maybe couldn't reproduce it exactly, but they came up with their best guess equivalent and assigned that sound to that kanji, even if they were using it in Japanese. But in the majority of cases, they also already had a word for a similar or the same concept in Japanese, right? A really good example is this one. Was this one of your radicals?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Kind of reminds me of Yama.
It is Yama.
That's Yama?
Yeah, that's Yama.
Doesn't look like it to me.
Well, that's a little, I guess it's just
When
different.
it's print font, it's a little bit different, but I'm handwriting. So it can be read Yama. It can also be read San. San is from the Mandarin Shan, whereas Yama is a original Japanese word. Okay, but either one, it means mountain, right?
Yeah.
So depending on the word, you might get one reading or the other. Generally speaking, if it's a single kanji standing all by itself with, hiragana immediately after it or immediately before it or both, a lot of times those are going to be the Japanese readings. So for example, I showed you Hiro from Chihiro's name. Hiroi is an adjective that means wide or broad. So spacious. So hiroi, you see it's got an E after it. That's a pretty good guess that's a Japanese reading because the Chinese word, first of all, wouldn't have multiple syllables usually assigned to a single kanji, and it wouldn't have a hiragana ending to it, right? Because Chinese doesn't use it. Chinese readings of kanji generally are one syllable per kanji, and they generally are two or more kanji compounds more often. Not always, and san can be read as san, but it doesn't usually stand alone as san in a sentence. If you're saying that over there is a mountain, are wa yama desu, right? You're not going to say are wa san desu. It doesn't work that way. But if you're talking about a specific mountain, it might have san in the name. So like Fuji-san, are wa Fuji-san desu. That is Mount Fuji.
I was wondering why they would call it Mount Fuji, even if they say Fuji-san, like
Yeah.
Mr. Fuji, like who? What?
Yeah,
Huh?
no, it's Fuji-san with this san ending. So anytime you see two or more kanji as a compound word, it's very likely that you're going to give all of those pieces their Chinese readings in some form or other. Now, sometimes there are multiple Chinese readings. Because for one thing, Chinese has multiple dialects. And which dialect was standard depended on who was in political power.
Mandarin?
That's modern.
Oh.
So whoever was in charge at the time in China, if it was Tang Dynasty, then the Tang Dynasty dialect was the standard. If it was Ming Dynasty, different dialects was the standard, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes Japanese would adopt kanji readings for kanji they already had, but they'd have a new encounter with China, learn a new pronunciation for that same kanji, and adopt that one too, on top of the other ones they already had. So some kanji have like 6 different readings, 2 or 3 kanji, 2 or 3 Chinese ones, and a few Japanese ones, and you have to know the context to know which one to use.
Will there ever be a case where the kanji, which looks exactly like the katakana for ta,
Yeah.
is there ever going to be a case in a sentence where you might see that and might confuse someone for being mute?
Oh, okay, the question was, if you've got a kanji like this that looks identical to a katakana, is there ever going to be a case where the context would be so confusing that you weren't sure if it's katakana or kanji? Is that what you're trying to ask?
There's a few katakana letters.
Usually that won't happen, because if it's katakana, normally it's going to be part of a whole word, and so you're going to be able to recognize that, yeah, there's a,
What if the ta comes at the
There's
end
a
of
ta
the
here.
word, and then
Oh,
and then it
well-
goes into actual like mountain or whatever, and then it's like
well, there aren't that many words that end in a plain ta. I mean, think about words like computer. It ends with that, because it's got ta. It's got the extended vowel sound on it. So you're still
okay,
not
that's good.
gonna run it up against the kanji. And then whatever's gonna be in this space is most likely gonna be a particle anyway, right? So that's, again, more separation.
But these sorts of things do happen where it's
I mean,
really
it
easy
is
to-
possible, but there are a bunch of katakana in particular that do look an awful lot like kanji that exist, that can stand alone. But most of the time, there's also going to be a little bit of a font style difference between the kanji font and the katakana font. You know, not, you know, just as you're typing along, keeping in whatever font you chose, there's usually going to be a slight difference between the kanji and the katakana, so that, you know, if you've got this and this occurring as kanji versus katakana, you should see a slight difference in how they're written. You know, 'cause those are a couple of examples of ones that occur as both. But, yeah, occasionally when they start trying to get cutesy with fonts, sometimes there are things that are confusing. I've seen children's materials where it was hard to tell the difference between sheet and suit because they were being overly cutesy with it and doing like bubble writing. You know, if you're writing your sheet and suit like that, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between them. But
Also, how you wrote Yama earlier, I compared it to how they wrote in the book.
yeah, because that's a print font, that's handwriting. Okay, there's always going to be slight differences between print fonts and handwriting. The other thing is that in your textbook, the large print versions of the kanji, when they're introducing each new kanji, those are a print font that's based off of a calligraphy style. It's a very clear print calligraphy style, not a stylized brass script one. But it is a calligraphy style. Those shifts and changes in thickness of the lines is something that you can really only reproduce with a calligraphy brush and a few decades of skill.
Or brush pen.
Yeah. Or what?
Brush pen.
Yeah, but still, you
Yeah,
still need
yeah.
the decades of skill there too.
In the textbook, there was a sentence, like in the examples, where
Uh-huh.
they were talking about Kyo today and
Yeah.
Kyoto, the place.
Yeah.
And I would assume that Kyo in Kyoto is like, is there a kanji for today as well
Yes.
as the one that means
Yeah.
capital?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Key little yo.
That's the Kyo from Kyoto. And Kyo from today, that means today, sometimes it's written as hiragana. When it's not, it's actually that.
Oh yeah, I
It's
see it.
actually
That's-
two
I've seen
kanji.
that a lot, that's why I was.
Yeah, and the other thing that's an interesting context thing, and you really do have to pay attention to context, is this can be read as kyo, but if you see it with a wa after it, it could also be read as konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa, the
Oh, wow,
greeting,
yeah.
konnichiwa.
Good afternoon.
'Cause that means
Because
calling
this
you up.
kanji by itself is often read as kon, and this is read as nichi, right? So this is konnichiwa if it's got a period after it. Because konnichiwa is not the start of a sentence anymore, it's a standalone phrase.
I just saw that.
But if it doesn't have a period after it, if it has a whole sentence going on from it, then it's probably meant to be read kyo. You know, if it's something like kyo wa, kyo wa restaurant de karemasu.
And of course, that's how
That-
you would write konnichiwa in kanji, because the wa
Yeah.
particle is written in hiragana. And
Yes, particles like wa, de, ni, they're always in hiragana. One of the whole reasons why hiragana had to be invented in the first place was that Chinese doesn't have those kinds of particles. So there was no character for Japanese to borrow to serve that function. So they had a hard time writing in true Japanese until hiragana was invented. Before that, printed works in Japan were actually written in Chinese. And if they were attempting to write in Japanese, there was a time period where there was this weird hybrid going on, where some characters in the text were being used for their Chinese meaning value, and some were being used purely for phonetic purposes to replace something like a particle wa. And that's why they had to do something different, because it was almost impossible to read the darn things, because you were having to switch back and forth between, okay, well, this I have to read for the meaning, pronounce it this way, but this I have to read just for the pronunciation, I have to pronounce it this other way, and it was very confusing to read.
Our Japanese exchange student friend, whose name I can't remember right now.
Hitoshi-san?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was saying that occasionally people will use the hiragana for wa in
Mhm.
place of that for konnichiwa and konbanwa.
Oh, the hiragana wa,
Yeah,
not
they'll
the,
interchange it sometimes.
this one?
I mean,
is-
clearly one is more correct than the other if you're
Yeah.
saying it in a sentence, but like, apparently when they text or whatever, they do that sometimes.
This, I would say, is probably the equivalent of writing TONITE in your text.
Yeah, okay.
When you're texting somebody on your phone,
Um,
and you just can't be bothered to correct your crazy spellings.
I was like, "Do you like what?"
And I'm like,
I was spelling it out and I was like.
Yeah, or like writing the digit 2 and then MORO for tomorrow. You know, all that sort of text speak shorthand, Japanese people do it too. And
Oh yeah, I saw something about that in anime.
yeah, and so that would be an example, I think, of text speak. I would imagine that all of the Japanese literature teachers all over Japan are having collective apoplexy about this, but it's still happening. They're probably not at all happy about it, because Japanese teachers in Japan are just as upset about the deterioration of their language as English teachers are in this country, because of text speak and chat and everything else that's causing
LOL,
people
what
to-
that?
Yeah. all that stuff. Yeah, you write that in your English paper sometime and see what you get.
Oh.
F.
Oh, I read something that Australian schools allow that.
Okay, this isn't
Schools
Australia.
suck.
Australian, like, they do that.
Yeah, well, Aussies are known to be several degrees more casual than Americans. Most of the world thinks we're casual. Aussies make us look formal.
Well, didn't Australia used to be a penal colony?
Yeah. Okay, in terms of questions about any of this lesson, since we've got our skits and tests coming up next
Tuesday.
class, next Tuesday, do you guys have questions, or do you want to just have more practice time to speak with one another?
Practice.
I have
What
a
it-
question. Okay.
Somebody do first.
What exactly, you said the use points of grammar for the skit, what exactly are?
Well, if you look in your grammar section in the textbook, okay, if you look in lesson 3 grammar section,
What page is that?
starting page 88. 88ページを見てください。Okay. Do you see how verb conjugation is numbered 1? Okay, and then you flip the page. Verb type in the present tense is number 2. Particles are number 3. Time references are number 4. Masenka is number 5. Word order is 6. Frequency adverbs are 7. Topic particle wa is 8.
Okay.
Those are the 8 grammar points of this lesson.
Okay.
Now, some of those obviously are going to overlap. You know,
Yeah.
a single sentence might cover 3 or 4 of those because of the ones that are included in this chapter. But what I'm looking for is for you to show me mastery of all of those points, that you can use them correctly in context.
See, I'm glad I asked because I was thinking like you were needing like specific things, like not necessarily each section being its own part, but like,
Okay.
like 6
Yeah.
verbs.
Well, no, if you look at the dialogue at the front of the chapter, you see that part?
Yeah.
If you look through it carefully, you will find examples of all the grammar structure points, all those 8 points, somewhere in there,
Okay.
okay? And I have had some students use those dialogues and just change out some vocabulary and stuff if they just didn't feel very creative that chapter. But I like it when you guys get creative and do something more than that. But that is something that you can use as also just as a jumping off point, give you some ideas to work with and then expand on them. The other thing you can use as a good jumping off point is at the end of pretty much every lesson, when you get to the end of the chapter, there's a section called Matome no Renshu, review exercises. See, Matome no Renshu, 100ページ。100 pages. See it?
I did those for the homework last week because you had 6 marks on,
Oh.
and there is no 6. You
Oh.
had 6A on the homework, but there
Yeah, you
is.
had 6A, so.
Okay,
I did
I must have meant 5A and had a typo. Gomennasai. Yeah, because there is no 6. Okay, so, yeah, but Matome no Renshu also often has activities that make good jumping off points or idea sparks for skits. So a lot of my students like to use things like, you know, this part D is saying, suggest to a classmate that you do something together over the weekend, use dialogue 1 as a model. You could use that as your skit idea, to have a scenario where one of you is inviting another person to do something over the weekend, and the whole discussion could be, you know, hey, why don't we do this? No, I don't like that. Well, let's do this. No, I don't want to do that. Let's do this. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, what time? How about 7 o'clock? No, that's too late. How about 5 o'clock? Oh, that's too early. You know, you could you could totally make a whole skit based off of that one concept, right?
Huh.
So, basically, the idea is you can be as creative as you want to be, but my preference is that you stay within the parameters of what we're actually learning in this class. So try to cover those 8 grammar points to show me that you've actually learned how to use them, how to apply them to a real life or realistic conversation in real life, right? And then you can also, of course, incorporate anything from previous chapters that's relevant for you, vocabulary or grammar, anything that we've learned already that you feel works in your skit, you know, including, you know, going all the way back to the Greetings and all of that. If you're going to use anything that goes beyond the scope of what we've learned thus far, I really prefer that you limit that to just the least number of examples of that you can manage. You know, if there's 1 or 2 vocabulary words that you really have to include in order to make the whole thing work, fine, remember to teach them to the class beforehand if possible. If you're trying to say something that we don't have the grammar to say yet, either because we haven't learned that structure or we haven't learned how to conjugate the verb in the way that would allow you to do that, I'd really rather you find some other way to express whatever it is you're trying to express, because Japanese grammar is complicated. And when you try to ad-lib and put together some kind of a made-up grammar sentence, it usually falls flat. It's very hard to actually understand somebody when they're saying a sentence that's totally made-up grammar. You know, just think about it. If I came to you and I said, I dog-like.
Huh? I think
know,
you
and
have
I
a blow to the head.
Yeah, the grammar is messed up, right? It doesn't make any sense. And I'm not even pluralizing the word dog, so you can't even tell, do I mean that I like dogs as pets, or do I like dog meat like they eat in Korea?
Oh, they eat dog meat in Korea?
Yeah.
That's messed up.
So there are problems with just deciding to ad-lib it when you're talking about language. Now, obviously, if you're in Japan and you need to get an idea across and you don't have the grammar you need, sure, go ahead and throw whatever you can out there until something works. But the point of this class is to try to actually learn what really is the real language. So for the class, I prefer that you not push the boundaries quite that far. In class, sure, when we're practicing, if you're trying to do whatever the sentence is in the workbook or whatever, and you get it wrong, that's what class is for. Make mistakes and learn from them, right? But, you know, for a skit, I want it to be a little more polished. I'm looking for you to show me what you've learned this whole lesson and, honestly, this whole semester up to this point. Okay? Also, one other quick note before I give you guys some time to practice. We were having a discussion before everybody else walked in about homework. I hope everybody understands that the reason for this much homework and the reason for it being for a grade is because I'm hoping that you're actually learning from doing all these exercises at home. Okay? And if you're not doing them all and you're still getting good grades on the quizzes, then maybe you don't really need to do all of them, and as long as it's not hurting your grade more than you can stand, then that's not necessarily a problem. If you're not doing all the homework and then you're finding yourself not doing well on quizzes, that's a problem. That means that you really do need more practice, and doing the homework would give you more practice as well as a better homework grade, which might help your overall average. So I would encourage you to keep up with the official grade information, and if you see your grade dipping, look at why it's dipping, because the categories are there, right? You should be able to see what your averages are for quizzes and homework and tests and so forth. If your grade is not where you want it to be, please look at that, see where you think you need to work on improving, and if you need help in any way, please come see me about it. Okay? Hi.
You showed us which ones you were irrelevant to our radical
Yeah,
sheets for 8 through 11, but for the first
the
ones.
first parts that we didn't talk about, okay, I can go over that real quick. Hey, hi, and you had another question too, while I'm sorry, I look at this.
I didn't put my paper in there, so you know I
Did you
didn't
find?
because I didn't put like a paper marker.
I found
Okay,
it,
okay,
yeah.
Sorry. For number 8, it says.
No,
"Nani
okay.
no
I wanted to say it
oki
and then
natsuka?"
I'll butcher
And
it,
that's-
so.
and I said, "Watashi wa hachiji
Sake,
koro
nade,
Do
nai.
you put a ni
I have no
here
idea.
for?
It's optional.
Okay.
Yeah, they put it in parentheses in the textbook. After a goro, because goro is approximately, you can put a ni or not. If you're more focusing on the goro, you could leave the ni out because goro is non-specific, right? But if you're more focusing on the hachiji part, because it's really pretty close to hachiji all the time, then you can put the ni and it's perfectly fine.
What about weekend? I looked at
Shumatsu
the-
ni, yes, you can put ni there, you don't have to.
Okay. I did, and I was like, it looks wrong without it.
Yeah, I personally usually put ni after shumatsu, but I've also heard people use shumatsu wa for that topic sentence thing. Shumatsu wa nani o shimasu ka? What do you do on weekends? And weekends is kind of the topic there.
Yeah, I saw that for the question, but for the
Yeah.
answer, I didn't know if weekend was the appropriate,
Yeah.
or whether ni was the appropriate for weekend as an
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, well, if you're answering shumatsu wa nani o shimasu ka, you wouldn't necessarily repeat the shumatsu part. You would probably say something along the lines of, yoku eiga o mimasu, or tokidoki hon o yomimasu, or whatever it is that you want to say that you often do on weekends.
I need to write it out for practice.
Yeah, you can, but in normal, natural Japanese
You wouldn't, yeah.
conversation, they generally do omit things that are clearly understood and redundant.
Yeah, I just wanted to write it out for practice for something
Yeah.
special.
What if it's after, or what if it's before a noun, a verb that does not have any movement, like nemasu? Can you still put, watashi wa juji goro ni nemasu?
Yes, 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 okay, so if it's a time phrase before okimasu and nemasu, those don't have movement in the sense of going to or from a place, but it's time that you're talking about, right? So you can still use ni because it's time. So, 10時に寝ます, to sleep at 10 o'clock. Because the ni that comes after time is more like at such and such time, right? Versus ni ikimasu, like restaurant ni ikimasu is going to the restaurant. So in that case, ni is more like I can't think of the word in English now. No,
No,
it's more like to in English, right? The preposition
Sometimes hear
is
that
what I'm
in
trying to
there.
say.
Like to go to?
Yeah.
What,
So, Restaurant ni ikimasu is I go to the restaurant, right? Or someone goes to the restaurant. But 10時に寝ます is I sleep at 10 o'clock. And 10時に行きます would be I go at 10 o'clock. Okay, so if you're talking about going someplace at 10, if you've already established where it is you're going and you don't want to repeat that part of the information, but somebody's asking you now, well, what time are you going to go there? 10時に行きます is perfectly legitimate as a sentence. But all it's telling you is I'll go at 10 o'clock. It doesn't tell you where you're going or with whom or any other information at that point. But Japanese is full of instances of that where some part of the information is already known, so it just doesn't get repeated in the same conversation. New information is what gets shared. Okay, as far as radicals that you don't need,
I have all the pages there, but
Yeah.
the ones on top are the ones before,
right,
yeah.
yeah. No, there aren't any others
In the first
before fine silk that we're teaching an irrelevant, radical. All the others are relevant. Oh, and the one that Hitoshi-san was talking about last night that looks more like katakana ne
Yeah.
without the extra line, it's actually the short form of this kanji,
Oh.
not the clothing one. So that's why, yeah, that's why I didn't know what he was talking about when he said there's one other version. A lot of Japanese young people don't learn the radicals either. So he may just not have realized that those are actually two different radical
Yeah,
meanings.
because I
This
have it
one
written
means
down
to
as
show.
clothing.
Yeah, the other one is clothing, but this one means to show as in, I'm just gonna show this to you. So, yeah, they are different. So, yeah, but, let's see, some, do you have a question still?
We don't.
Okay. Okay, I want to give you guys at least a little bit of time for some conversation practice. Whatever part of the textbook you haven't already done oral practice on of the pair work is fair game. If you need help with the starting point, I'd say try Makume no Renshu because that's a sort of overview of everything. 100ページと101ページ。That would be
ありがとう
good.
先生。
Right, that would be good, some good stuff to practice, because it's kind of reviewing everything at once. So, and I can come help if you guys have any questions. Just pick a partner and.
Sensei, I have a question about this culture note on the Japanese houses. Are the bathrooms really shaped like that? And what's that right there, the circle thing?
Seth, you want to ask
Okay,
are there
what
some
you're
questions?
seeing again is
Let's do it.
Hate that Left 4 Dead. You play that game? No. Just like the one black guy, like, he'll just say, like, for no reason whatsoever, he'll just like, come on, let's do it. Like, whenever, just whenever. I'll send you a video, and you're gonna be like, what is this? And you're gonna like die, absolutely die. It's
So that's
reminded me about the donkey video.
Stand in
Look
the
that up
shower.
yet.
We haven't time to make it today.
Okay, let's do it. Come on, let's do it.
So,
shelf up here.
I don't know, I just think it's a funny inside joke. Whoever says that should just get shot like a million times. Like, I don't know why.
Typical shower style.
Okay, tough guy, heal up.
Is
Yeah, but
a shower next to a tub.
okay, so I think we should just go in if we're like general and just be like ask or each other after these questions.
Okay.
So like, yeah. So you start with like Nanjini Okimasu ka? Or Nanjini Goro Okimasu ka?
Wait, so
What about what time do you get up?
So isn't that kind of
So you can ask.
dirty?
I mean, you probably just skip the Goro and just go
That is
asking what time do you get up, you don't do these things at specific times all the time, but you might have varied schedule, but
Yeah. Okay.
so clean
you
first.
can go with Yoku or Goro. The Goro is down, Yoku usually often, whatever.
Yeah, well, I'm West guy, so I leave hair.
Nanjini,
Yeah, I got hair going. I'm like, I got.
Well, and that's the point, you scrub yourself long enough that you don't have any stray hairs left on your skin anywhere that are gonna come off.
Okay.
And I have a lot of stress, so I have my own hair.
Yeah,
Side
so, but
day.
that's what it is, you get your dinner first, and then you.
Nanjini
And
Asa Gohan
Japanese bathhouses,
Tabe
they actually, they're.
I got the wool.
There's no privacy.
How we must say.
Women's side, that's it. You don't have to-
Okay.
Yeah,
me too.
also Gohan, how we must say.
A whole bunch of shower spigots for
Uh,
you to clean at.
I
And you
I
just
would,
pick up.
how old are you again? Like,
And then on the other side of the room somewhere, and then depending on the size of the bathhouse, there could be multiple.
I guess I already know the answer to that.
And you
How do I go to
pick
school?
Gakko,
where you wanna go, so.
Nanji.
So I can go with the one that's like
Nanjini
50
Gakko.
or 60 or 70.
Right, you go to whichever
Gakko?
one, sometimes you like that,
Oh.
sometimes you like to change
I
from
don't,
one to another.
I was just asking when you go to school. I don't know.
While you're going to
I'm not really sure it's relevant unless you go to a different like class other than this.
Yeah, okay.
You can go for it though.
I had no idea.
And they generally, if you're going to a, it's called a modesty towel, which doesn't cover a whole lot.
Just, wait, isn't that?
Big fig leaf. Yeah. It's generally modesty towels. If you're skinny enough, it might wrap around your waist.
I've seen those in mangas and in anime when like
Yeah.
when they go
So you've got the image, yeah. So like if you're skinny enough, it might wrap around your waist.
Wait, is that for men?
Yeah. And
I
women
actually
usually
think I
use
never
long
practiced
waist.
staying.
The problem I have for some reason is like
They
I know
did it for guys.
is always going to be referring to
I don't think they would do
where,
it
like,
because if it's a modesty towel.
when something
It
is,
wouldn't be very long.
where something is being done, not like you going to somewhere. Like, I feel like that's the problem I have starting saying that, but
Although.
Yeah, I think it's you can think about the verb too.
You mean
They show you what they go with.
Wow.
If you're going somewhere, then you'd be using the need.
yeah, like if it was the difference between me saying like I study at school, or
Wow.
or sorry, I study at home, or I'm going home to study, it'd be like uchi de benkyou shimasu, or it'd be like
They're like those diamonds in the rough that
go
people
home
look for.
to study, or I'm going to study at home.
Not everybody
It's like
would want
not home yet, so I guess I would say like uchi ni benkyou shimasu.
Especially
Day,
currently.
using the because it's not like you're moving towards the home. It's like you're studying at home later. So I think you
And
use
the
later.
Japanese toilet, is it really a hole in the ground?
Like I think you only use knee or
With a flush.
head.
And they send the.
Maybe it'd be a hand, because it's like my goal of going home studying.
Yeah, she said that they're both interchangeable.
Indoor.
That's why I say knee.
So it's actually an indoor.
Yeah, it's in the house, but,
Uchi ni
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Okay, let's ask another one.
Hiru gohan.
But, yeah, the squats.
Wait, sorry. Nanji ni
It
hiru
kind of
gohan.
reminds me of a day.
But
But
it's actually
it's
squat.
in the ground.
It's the width of the porcelain part. is
Oh
not
wait,
to be that
right.
When I looked at it, I thought it was like,
Some of them
Hiru
come
gohan.
with footprints on either side to show you where your
Tabe
feet
desu ka?
some.
Some, usually in the touristy areas.
Oh, wow, I'm like, I am not getting down there.
Yeah. And a lot of the men's rooms have it here.
Especially
Yeah, that's,
Is that the same in like Japanese airports, but like a guy from, say,
TG.
from New York, he comes to Japan and he doesn't know how to use one? Do they have like regular?
in the, yeah, if you look for the handicap symbol, there's in the bigger places, there's usually a handicap sign. That's the
Yeah, something like that. I really just feel like I just want to like talk about it. Like I've already graduated from this future, or present, future tense nonsense, and just say stay after everything.
Oh
Yeah.
There's Genkan.
I guess that would
explains here what a Genkan is. So that's where, okay, so do you bring your own slippers or are they like guest slippers?
Kami must stay.
And then if you're gonna be living someplace, then
Can
you
you
go out
can
and
you
find
answer this one?
yourself over, so you
Doi
don't have to
de
guess what.
benkyū
The
shimasu
guest
ka?
ones are, one size fits nobody,
Eh?
basically.
So, like, I'm a size 12, so they have like size.
Your heel's gonna hang over.
Oyabi?
Okay.
Yeah,
Wait, what were you asking?
yeah, you're gonna wanna go to the store.
Doi de benkyū shimasu ka?
Doi de?
Yeah,
You,
it's down
you
at the
won't hang off the
bottom.
back as far as.
This one?
Do you study?
Dole desu ka?
But I think
No,
that's
oh,
not
oh,
that a
oh,
size
sorry,
is
doko de. Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
That's not.
Well, now you got
What is
people
that
who-
word? I don't
because
know.
think about it, there's a lot of,
Why I
there's a lot of
couldn't
stuff
find
changed.
it. I was saying doi at home. Doko de benkyū shimasu ka?
5'10", 5'10", right?
You'll be,
Uchi de benkyū shimasu
yeah,
We got
because
teeth.
some places are just
Yeah.
lower.
Really old house.
Yeah, old houses.
Let's see. Does that say Itsu?
Yeah, I don't know what that means though.
Does that mean?
Oh.
Probably in the
Oh.
90s.
I think
They were so miserable from osteoporosis.
Okay.
They had everything in their house. Mostly.
Oh yeah, I should know that. Yeah, so Itsu. Oh wait, so this is answer the
Whoa.
question. Itsu Terebi
That's like elementary school height.
Imaska.
Chiobi
Wow.
Terebe
My dad's
Terebi.
Teribi
Terebi. Yeah.
Ichio Chiobi Ni
we stayed at real high
Terebi
and
Wo
the
Mimas.
bedding was not warm enough to cover him. If he had it up to his chin, his feet stuck out. It looked like something out of Dr. Seuss.
Oh,
Nichiobi?
Nichiobi.
wow, we're almost at
Only Sunday?
You know, just
At
change
least your
things
answer
up.
wasn't
Show,
Mainichi.
is that show?
Every day.
Shoji.
I think I do watch
sliding
TV every day.
of course.
Good. You can answer Mainichi then.
So, Sportsu wo shimasu ka?
Sports.
Sportsu
Yeah.
wo shimasu ka?
Still
They make
very
those walls that separate
good,
rooms.
but they make walls.
But it's like, but if you're playing your game into your parents' room and they hear you like, go, go!
I think we know
Okay,
how to
yeah,
They
say
don't walk down
tennis.
very well at all.
And there's a Tommy here.
Amari.
Modern Japanese houses have mainly Western style rooms that are equipped with Western storage. However, most bathrooms retain traditional characteristics.
I'm assuming that's the way it says. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't play sports very often.
We'll
I
have
think so. Maybe.
I wasn't sure about the particle between. Did you just not have a particle between Amari? There is no particle between it.
Yeah, no particles.
So Amari sports
very high
Yeah.
tech, but
Yeah, shimasu.
kitchen with an eating area.
So they're like, so these are like.
Shimasen. There we go.
Yeah, that's-
Is it
and-
supposed to be?
yeah,
It's
that
supposed to be
part
a
right
negative
now.
at the end, right?
A low table.
So I guess Amari would actually be much
Fit
by
in the
itself.
kitchen with those little
So-
table and chairs, or you can have a little table and a tummy room
Oh, is that right?
with as many zabutons,
Shimatsu wa
sitting cushions as you can fit around the
Doko
table, and you can
ni
have a larger group of friends over.
ikimasu ka?
There's more space if you're not trying to make sure that
Tokyo ni
everybody just gets to would you like to notice that this
That's what you do on your weekend.
Like,
Where you are on your weekends.
There's a
Sometimes I'm in
movie with Tommy Lee
Tokyo.
Jones called The Emperor. It's like,
I guess.
as soon as World War II was over, they had to investigate the Emperor for war. Yeah, and when they're coming in,
Shimatsu wa doko ni
that's what they say is a suspect. And when the
What do you
main
do?
character
What
is
do you-
going into a
or
home
where
that
are
belongs
you
to
usually on your
someone
weekends?
someone that they're
Where are
interviewing.
you on your weekends?
There's like a tummy mat, the wife is like on her knees in a kimono and on a pillow with her
You're
knees.
usually in Tokyo?
Private
jet plane.
We're practically Japanese. We're not answering the questions truthfully.
Oh, I was hoping to know.
So, asa nani o tabemasu ka?
Entertain guests formally, but if you're just
I don't know the word for cereal.
friends over, they might be in casual family.
I have to know. That'll answer the question.
And stuff like that. I haven't.
Make this as difficult as possible for myself. And if possible, you too.
She was so used to traditional ways of doing things. She actually preferred to even when she was sitting on the couch in her
Stupid
chair.
dictionary doesn't have it.
She didn't like leaving her feet dangling. Maybe it was partly because she was so short that they didn't trust her
Yeah.
but she was actually more comfortable kneeling because that's what she was accustomed to her whole life. Yeah. You don't know?
Oh, I guess I'll just have to find something. Ice cream.
I love ice cream.
They can still use the toilet when they're in their 70s.
Honban nani
They should be doing
o
it.
Shimasta.
It's more and more now, it's getting
So you're asking if you
common
want to play tennis, so
that
we just.
What will you do
develop
tonight?
accommodations for people who are older.
Is that what these are? They're saying like, what do you do at night, not
Like,
what will you
had
do?
a host family once.
Well, no, what will you do, yeah, or what, it can be what will you do, or what are you doing, or any of those things, depending on the context, I don't know. It can be what do you do, it could be what will you do, what are you doing.
What's up here?
It was just like a portable toilet seat that just
No,
like
me.
over a real toilet.
It sounds like something you give your little kids for like,
Yeah, it was kind of like an
That's
adult
gross.
version that had people
Sake?
who could handle.
and there's also toilet paper, so that, you have, so you 1 and 2 in there?
Freaking,
Wow.
okay.
And the girl.
I'm West, so I'm like accustomed to seeing it.
Is that
Yeah, well,
done?
everybody in America is.
Every
but
night?
that's the way they did it traditionally in Japan. But like they said,
Different cultures.
a lot of Japanese homes now,
Goro.
houses being built these days are all built with toilets in them.
Interesting.
Are you even doing,
There are
are
a
you
lot
even doing
older
the exercise?
What time do you go tonight? Go to sleep every
Depends
night.
on where you are. If you're in a home that's 50 years old or 100 years old, they probably
Okay,
have
so,
the old
so
stuff.
you can't cheat.
And there, in the countryside, there are plenty of people living in old homes like that.
Wanting to be a composer, and she was doing so when they train composers first and puzzles. And she gets paired up with,
Yeah, Hermes
as far as school.
Well, actually, he's going to read through everything in the book.
You guys can stay and keep talking if you want
I
to.
think I want to say Tokidoki Asa.
Okay, well, that's good practice too. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
Yeah.